Hello and welcome to another episode of MacStories Unwind. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm having a great day. You know what? We're sponsored this week by Rogue Amoeba, so thanks to Rogue
Thank you,
Amoeba.
Rogue Amoeba.
You'll hear a little bit. You'll hit a little bit more about them later in the episode. But I'm doing really well. I wanted to talk to you. I feel like we were fighting the other day, Federico. We're fighting about a white wolf. About the dire wolf.
About the dire wolf. The dire wolf is back, sort of.
They're back, baby.
Kinda. The wolves.
Kinda, sorta, maybe not.
So,
but they're kind of back.
so I ran into this story the other day. I saw a cover of Time magazine with the word extinct crossed out, saying that the dire wolf is back. So the dire wolf is this, type of wolf that went extinct 10,000 years ago. Something like that. So a long time ago.
Something like that.
This variety of wolf that is much bigger than the regular gray wolf. You know, have you ever seen a gray wolf in real life?
Oh, in real life, no.
Me neither.
Maybe at a zoo at some point, I suppose, but not like outside. Wolves are more of a thing in the very far northern parts of the United States and out west. I don't. We have coyotes here.
Coyotes,
smaller animals,
smaller.
Not wolves, I don't believe.
Yeah. So the dire wolf used to be much bigger, bulkier than the gray wolf, than the American gray wolf or the I believe we have a variety of wolf in Abruzzo. It's a region of Italy. I think it's called wolf.
You've got Romulus and Remus is what they're called, right?
Yes, hold on, we'll get to that. First of all, in Italian, wolf is lupo, Lupo. There's in fact a Latin, an ancient Roman expression. It means lupus in fabula. It means it's literally the wolf in the story. That's what it means. The wolf in the fable. It's an ancient Roman expression. But yeah, the dire wolf used to be much bigger. Bigger head, bigger body, bulkier, heavier. This predator that used to hunt. What was the favorite prey of the dire wolf? Like the snow bison or something like that. Like all animals that went extinct, and that also potentially led to the extinction of the dire wolf. And there's this this American company called Colossal Bioscience, something like that.
I think that's right.
And Colossal, so they have taken on to this challenge of bringing back de-extincting animals from
Federico is doing air quotes on the video.
Yes, I'm doing the air quotes because technically speaking, like, this is not Jurassic Park. We're not talking about taking a fossil and bringing the fossil back to life. This is not what they've done. This is a biotech company that is they're taking this approach where they're sampling the DNA from, in this case, the actual dire wolf. I believe they used a DNA sample from 10,000 years ago, as well as another DNA sample from 72,000 years ago. And they are reconstructing the genome, the DNA of the dire wolf. And what they have done in this case, and the reason why you've seen this story, you've seen the Time magazine cover, there's been a bunch of other profiles on the internet that they publish and interviews and videos. They have a whole channel on YouTube with some behind the scenes. What they have done is they have taken some of the genes from the DNA of the dire wolf, and they have sort of reconstructed those genes. They have implanted and modified the DNA of the gray wolf. So think of it as basically taking the DNA of the regular American gray wolf and mixing in, sort of almost like a cocktail almost, in some of the DNA, some of the genes that made the dire wolf the dire wolf. So the white fur coat, the bigger head, the bigger body, and some of the different attitude the dire wolf had. They used 3 dogs for gestation of this dire wolf, again, air quotes, and they successfully birthed these 3 wolves, 2 male wolves and 1 female, Romulus, Remus and Khaleesi. I think it's Khaleesi in this case is the name of a dragon from Game of Thrones, and obviously Romulus and Remus are the founders of the beautiful city of Rome, which is where I'm coming from. And now these three wolves are living in an undisclosed location in the United States. This 2,000-acre location that is secluded from prying eyes because they didn't want people going there. They didn't want, only selected members of the press were able to see the wolves and to record footage of the wolves. These wolves were born in October. I believe Khaleesi was born in January. And the pups are, well, they're not exactly pups anymore because they're already quite big. And
I think they said they're 80 pounds.
They're 80 pounds. They're going to be 150 pounds when they're fully grown up. And there's been a lot of controversy in terms of does this actually mean that the dire wolf is not extinct anymore?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. This does not mean that we have literally brought back the dire wolf. It means these scientists are messing with the DNA of the gray wolf to produce something that is resembling very closely what the dire wolf supposedly looked like. Again, we don't have any photographic evidence of the dire wolf.
Right, it's 10,000 years ago.
But they believe, they're saying that these wolves are healthy, they're growing up, they're exhibiting behavior very typical of wolves. Although they look similar to dogs, wolves behave very differently from dogs. When you approach a wolf, it doesn't come to you, wagging its tail or, kissing you or just wanting to play around.
Right.
It's much more skeptical. It tends to isolate. It tends to hunt. It's a very different type of animal. There's been a lot of commentary on the internet around, first of all, the ethics of this approach, what this company is up to, some of the claims of this company. And personally, I gotta be honest, I am fascinated with this whole deal. I am fascinated with the idea of bringing back some species, or at least modifying, I don't want to say playing God, although some people are saying, oh, these folks are playing God. They're just modifying DNA like it was some recipe, and they're tweaking some genes here and there to bring back these animals. I think there is something to the idea of some arguably the most important claim that Colossal makes is we have lost some species over the course of human history. Some of them most likely due to human intervention and just humans destroying the planet. We have lost some species that, if brought back into existence, could restore some of the natural ecosystem of the species on Earth. So I am somewhat fascinated by that. But you in our private conversations, you accused these people of being. John used the expression bio-grifters.
Yes, I was feeling spicy. Yes, bio-grifters. So I actually find this story really fascinating too, and I think the science behind it is really interesting. I think that this company is probably doing some very interesting work on a very low level, and what they're trying to do with this experiment is capture the public imagination.
Yes.
And why is
so
that?
They're doing a very good job from a PR perspective. That we can agree with. Okay.
Right. And I think that that's a lot of what's going on here. I mean, because it's important to realize that the amount of DNA that was changed was less than 1% of the gray wolf's DNA. So we're talking about an animal that is 99 point something percent gray wolf. But it does look different, and they changed the genes that, the coloring of the fur and the shape of the head and all of that. So it does look more like a dire wolf. What is also going on with this company is that they're trying to raise money.
Yeah.
And companies that need to raise money in Silicon Valley, they need a good PR story. So they put they have these dire wolves, which obviously play off the popularity of Game of Thrones. It does a lot better than I think, a few weeks ago, you probably saw stories about these mice that had long hair, these shaggy mice. That was the same company. They injected woolly mammoth DNA into mice and grew very long hair on these mice.
The woolly mouse. It's very
the woolly mouse.
It's very cute mouse. Come on, it's a very cute.
It is, but it's a mouse that needs a comb because it's got much more hair than your typical mouse. But yeah, I mean, it's having an actual thing that looks different than other animals that we have makes a bigger difference, I think, than a fuzzy mouse. So the dire wolf, I think, has a lot more PR value for them. And so, you know, I mean, I'm this is like a lot of the tech stuff these days. I have a very high sensitivity for what I consider kind of grifting or just overhyped stuff. And to me, when I read it, I was like, you know, the other parts of the story were like, oh, these animals live in this undisclosed location because we don't want anybody getting a hold of them. And we sent these reporters to a second undisclosed location that was also a secret and brought the wolves to them. I mean, there's just a lot of drama surrounding this in a way that I think is above and beyond what is really going on. And what's really going on, though, is that they're trying to raise a lot of money, which, you know, I understand that's part of doing business, but I think also the story gets a little bit overhyped and a little bit overwrought compared to what is actually going on. It's not nearly as easy to raise money off the back of a scientific paper that says we put in, you know, 0.3% of DNA into a gray wolf and we were able to make a white wolf. You know, they need something like this, some footage, some video to really do that. So that was where I was coming from. Not so much that I don't find the underlying story interesting, but I do think it's one of those things that's just kind of made for the cover of Time magazine for a very particular purpose. And it's useful to understand what the motivations are because we see this on everything, Federico. We see this with AI now too. I mean, it's like one of the hardest things about AI these days is, you know, there's useful technology there, but there's also a bunch of nonsense that you have to comb your way through to find something useful. And that's just part of what the job is, I guess, is to be skeptical and think about these things.
Yeah, and I mean, like, look, the wolves are cute, right? Especially like the pictures.
Well, I know you like them because they're dogs. They're basically dogs.
Basically giant dogs, although they don't behave like dogs. But there's an argument
domesticated.
There's an argument to be made for the fact that, like, from an ethical perspective, like you gave birth to these wolves. They're never going to live in the wilderness because they said we're never going to release them. They will never get to experience, even if we assume these would behave like proper dire wolves, but they will never get to live the life of a dire wolf. Not just because there are no longer on this planet the circumstances for a dire wolf to exist for a whole bunch of reasons and have not existed for 10,000 years, but these wolves will never be able to just wander around the forest or something. Like, they will never be released. So there's that angle that I very much understand and resonate with. This company wants to, air quotes, de-extinct the woolly mammoth. Next, they expect they're gonna experiment with the Asian elephant, and since the gestation period of elephants is 22 months, which I didn't know. It was only 62 days for the wolves, for the cubs to be born, but it's gonna be 22 months for the elephants. So they're gonna use a similar approach to mix in some genes from the woolly mammoth, but I think they're gonna have to use a lot more genes than the wolves, and so they're expecting the de-extincted woolly mammoth to be born in 2028 at some point, and which would explain why they went for an easier creature first to raise a bunch of money and continue their experiments, and they also want to do the Tasmanian tiger. The Tasmanian tiger, we do have pictures of Tasmanian tigers from a century ago, so that'll also be interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. They are grifter adjacent. Like, that's the sort of vibe. Some of the underlying science is interesting, is undeniably interesting. We'll see. In the meantime, Romulus and Remus are healthy. We don't have pictures of Khaleesi. But yeah, unfortunately they're not free. They will never be released. So I hope they'll get to live their best lives, whatever those lives are gonna look like.
Yeah, well, and you know what? It's a nice distraction from some of the awful things going on in the world, I suppose,
Also
too, to be
that
able to read about some white wolves.
we could all use a cute wolf cub to brighten up.
Yeah, here's my tip. Here's my tip for people. I'm going to give people a tip. If the news is getting you down, delete that news app from your phone.
There you go.
Whether it's Apple News, whether it's New York Times, CNN, whatever you use. I read Apple News from time to time. I deleted it off my phone, and it's made a world of difference because I can't. There are fewer opportunities for me to go just doom scrolling, which is always a good thing. This episode of MacStories Unwind is brought to you by Rogue Amoeba, the makers of incredibly useful audio tools for your Mac. You can learn all about their apps at macaudio.com/MacStories. Take SoundSource, for example. It's an amazing app that lets you do all kinds of things with your audio. You control all of it. So you can apply effects to your audio, you can EQ it, you can send app audio to a particular output. There's a bunch of different things you can do. All the sorts of things you might want to do with sound that you can't do from the built-in tools from Mac OS. And there's their flagship product, Audio Hijack, for recording audio from your Mac, which is what I'm using to record this ad and all the podcasts that I've recorded over the past decade. Plus, you can bring your microphone and apps together in powerful virtual audio devices using Loopback, which is perfect for audio and video chats. And there's Farrago, which is a soundboard app. It brings sounds right to your fingertips that you can play in any context. It's really easy to use. All of Rogue Amoeba's apps are available as fully functional free trials right from their website. And with recent updates, you can now get started in seconds with no restarts, no extensions, and no system setting changes. Best of all, from now until the end of April, you can get 20% off your purchase. Just go to their website and use the coupon code MS2504 at checkout. Again, that's the letters M and S and the number 2504. Visit macaudio.com/MacStories today to learn more and get started. Our thanks to Rogue Amoeba for powering our audio needs on the Mac and sponsoring this show. All right, Federico, in terms of picks today, I've got one for you, a video game related one that's not actually a video game. It's an Apple TV Plus show called Side Quest.
Okay.
This is a spin-off from Mythic Quest, which I have suggested in the past. That show is all about a game development studio. It's kind of a comedy surrounding the developers and creative talent for a game called Mythic Quest. And one of the things that they have done on that show in the past, that they have dedicated a full episode during a season to a minor character or a story that's kind of adjacent to the world of Mythic Quest that was just very different and was its own standalone thing. And they decided to do that for an entire series, which is Side Quest, which is just a very limited side series of 4 episodes that I've watched all of them now. It's been out for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. They range kind of half hour to 45 minutes. And the first one focuses on the art director for the Mythic Quest game studio, who's on vacation with his girlfriend. And it kind of explores the work-life balance stuff that he's going through. And I really enjoyed it. That's the one that is the closest to the Mythic Quest show because it actually has one of the characters in it. But the second one revolves around a comic book shop. The third one revolves around an orchestra. And the fourth one, I am totally forgetting the fourth one. But anyway, they're totally different stories from the Mythic Quest plotline itself. One of my favorites, I think, is the one about the orchestra, about a young woman who learned how to play the cello and tried out to go on tour with the orchestra, an orchestra that was playing the Mythic Quest music. And this is something that obviously happens today with real video games. There are orchestras that are doing, the music from the Legend of Zelda games and all kinds of things all over the world. And this woman gets this plum spot where she is both obsessed with the game, loves the game, and loves music. And then she actually goes on tour, and all of a sudden, her passion and love for music and the video games becomes a job, and she kind of burns out. And it's an interesting story about burnout and how sometimes doing what you love as your job can impact how the way you love it and interact with it. And each one of these has that kind of thing. There's at the center of it somewhere is an obsession with this video game from Mythic Quest, but it tells a different story based on how those obsessions, impact these people. And they're very good. So I would highly recommend checking that out.
Nice. Okay.
Do you have anything for me this week, Federico?
I've just been doing a lot of work. I haven't touched.
Look at you.
I've just been watching Friends.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing with Sylvia. We are now up to season 5, so we're halfway through Friends, and
Wow.
that's all we've been watching. Really, we've been basically binging Friends every single evening. Yeah. So.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, let me leave everybody with a deal though this week too, because I think you're a fan of the Hunger Games, aren't you, Federico?
Yes.
I thought so. I thought you were a pretty big fan of the Hunger Games. The 4-film set on Apple TV right now is 50% off. So it's $14.99 instead of $29.99. That's just like $3.75 per movie. These, all 4 of these movies are in 4K, and they were released between 2012 and 2015. You can get them right now. It's 50% off. I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched these movies. They're more than a decade old at this point, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. But they're fantastic movies, and you can get them for a really good deal on Apple TV right now.
Nice.
So go grab them.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, that's it for this episode of MacStories Unwind. Thanks again to Rogue Amoeba for sponsoring the podcast. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can find me and Ticci over at MacStories.net. We're on social media too. Just look for our names. Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.